Your news, your views, your values. This is WMNF Tampa 88.5 FM.
This is Leela with a community announcement. The third annual Farm Aid Tampa Bay Music Fest takes place on Saturday, December 6th from 3 to 11 p.m. at Sweetwater Organic Farm. There will be jam bands and singer-songwriters, kids activities, and camping on the farm, all to support local sustainable farming. For more info, go to sweetwater-organic.org or WMNF's community announcements on WMNF.org. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to Community Speaks here on WMNF Radio 88.5 FM. I'm your host, Patro Mabili. And of course, the opportunity to take your telephone calls and your emails as we talk about these issues surrounding our times. Resisting racist laws, disobeying illegal military orders. Change and progress is good. Maintaining change is hard. So, welcome to Community Speaks. Today we will recall the life of Rosa Parks. She resisted the old vestiges of segregation on public accommodations by sitting down so that we can all live with dignity. She was so much more. She was a defender on so many levels. So we'll hear about that. But in 1955, on this day, during the civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama, she was a seamstress working all day for too long, for too little pay. Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat to a white man. And then she's arrested for violating the city's strict racial segregation laws. That was an incident which led to the city's bus boycott, which worked. And so today we will learn even more about Rosa Parks, so keep it tuned for that. And also the Pentagon's investigation of Senator Mark Kelly over a video that urges U.S. troops to defy illegal orders has raised a slew of questions and some criticisms from legal experts. The Arizona senator is among a group of Democrats appearing in a video that urges U.S. troops to defy what lawmakers are calling illegal orders. Some experts say the Pentagon is misreading military law to go after Kelly as a retired Navy fighter pilot, and others say that Kelly can't be prosecuted as a member of Congress. A group of former military prosecutors insist he did nothing wrong. President the POTUS has accused Kelly and 5 other Democratic lawmakers in the video of sedition, punishable by death, but contradictions are laid bare. When you consider POTUS's slew of pardons, the just announced pardon of Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who was convicted in federal court for conspiring to import cocaine into the United States and conspiring to possess destructive devices, including machine guns, marks a descent into something far more dangerous. POTUS is now blessing the drug trade while simultaneously blowing vessels and people out of the water because they're part of the drug trade. So big contradictions there. We can talk about it, but also a possible congressional review of POTUS's military strikes on the boats is also about to get underway. I look forward to your phone calls and emails as we talk about the motivations behind certain laws and actions on the part of those in power. Of course, you can call me 813-239-9663. 813-239-9663. That's the number to call if you want to talk to me today here on Community Speaks. And you can also write me, DJ at WMNF.org. Hopefully I get a chance to read your emails. But locally, those same types of laws were in effect locally. Biking while black was a Tampa law that disproportionately got young people of color ticketed and fined. And now there is a lot of consternation over an ordinance designed to prevent so-called street takeovers by bicyclists. And today is also Christmas Book Day, so you can share with me some of your reading material that you're reading over the Christmas holiday. As I went home to visit my family over the Thanksgiving holiday, I was elated to find that in this period of erasure of Black history, that my family, the young people in my family, were busy reading Black history. They were reading particularly the book that was talked about around the household on Thanksgiving was Black AF history, because of the way, especially the audiobook is very entertaining, but it's definitely full of knowledge that you could take with you and to share with across the generations at this moment in time when there are people who want to ignore history. And a lot of it is because it doesn't make white children feel good in class to hear how their ancestors acted. But we gotta resist turning back the clock, not just on what we learned, but what we are allowed to happen in terms of laws, in terms of the types of laws that people are considering bad law. We could talk about all of those issues today. Just give me a call, 813-239-9663. Michelle stands ready to take your telephone calls here on Community Speaks. But I'm going to start out as we talked about the legacy of Rosa Parks and how she stood up, how she sat down so that we can all stand up. But it was an act that even another young woman had carried out, resisting the segregated laws on public accommodations in Montgomery and Alabama and all over the Jim Crow South. People were defying and resisting those laws, these laws that were designed to basically strip people of their dignity, Black people of their dignity in this country. But, you know, people strike back with an actual bus boycott, which worked. But there was on the part of Rosa Parks, there was a hidden life that very few of us talk about. And we're going to turn to some TED Talk right now to find out what that life was, learn about the life of activist Rosa Parks and her work, not only with the NAACP and the bus boycotts, but her lifelong fight against racial inequality. And also she stood up for women. So let's take a listen to the hidden life of Rosa Parks as we get it started here on Community Speaks. And of course, looking forward to your telephone calls, 813-239-9663, 813-239-9663 as we turn to the hidden life of Rosa Parks.
In 1944, 11 years before her fateful decision on a Montgomery bus, Rosa Parks was investigating a vicious crime. As an emissary for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, she had traveled to rural Alabama to meet with Reese Taylor, a young woman who had been sexually assaulted by 6 white men. It would be difficult enough to convince an Alabama court that even one of these men was guilty, but Rosa was undeterred. She formed a committee to defend Reese in court, flooding the media with testimony and sparking protests throughout the South. When a jury failed to indict the attackers, Parks demanded the governor assemble a new grand jury. She wrote, "I know that you will not fail to let the people of Alabama know that there is equal justice for all of our citizens." Throughout her life, Parks repeatedly challenged racial violence and the prejudiced systems protecting its perpetrators. But this work came at an enormous risk and a personal price. Born in 1913, Rosa was raised by her mother and grandparents in rural Alabama. But outside this loving home, the fear of racial violence cast a long shadow. The Ku Klux Klan frequently drove past their home, and Jim Crow laws segregated public spaces. At 19, she settled in Montgomery and married Raymond Parks, a barber who shared her growing fury at racial injustice. He was involved with the local chapter of the NAACP, a role many avoided for fear of persecution. At first, Raymond was eager to keep Rosa safe from the potential dangers of activism. But as she grew more incensed at the limitations imposed on African Americans, she could no longer stand by. When she officially joined the NAACP in 1943, Parks and Johnny Rebecca Carr were the only women in the Montgomery chapter. She began keeping minutes for their meetings and soon found herself elected secretary of the chapter, formally beginning her secret double life. By day, Rosa worked as a seamstress to support her mother and husband. By night, she researched and documented numerous civil rights cases, from local policy disputes to high-profile murder cases and hate crimes. As secretary, she prepared public responses on behalf of the Montgomery chapter, battling the harsh sentencing, false accusation, and smear campaigns frequently used against African Americans. In addition to her legal work, Parks was a brilliant local strategist. As advisor to the NAACP Youth Group Council, she helped young people navigate segregated systems, including voter registration and whites-only libraries. Through the cover of the NAACP, Parks strived to bring clandestine civil rights activities into the open. She advocated for civil disobedience training and spoke out against racial violence, particularly the murder of Emmett Till. In 1955, her refusal to move to the back of a segregated bus helped ignite the grassroots movement she had hoped for. Parks was arrested and jailed for her one-woman protest, where she was visited by local activists. Together, they planned a 24-hour bus boycott. It lasted for 381 days. Parks' simple act had transformed nascent civil rights activism into a national movement. In 1956, the boycott ended when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of desegregating public transport. But this victory for the movement had come at a great cost. Rosa had been receiving vicious death threats throughout the campaign and was unable to find work in Montgomery because of her political reputation. In 1957, she moved to Detroit to continue working as a seamstress until being hired by Congressman John Conyers to help support his burgeoning civil rights campaigns. Ever vigilant in the fight against racial inequality, Parks remained active for the next 40 years. She wrote several books, traveled across the country giving talks to support other activists, and established an institute for the education of young people in her late husband's memory. Today, Rosa Parks is remembered as a radical spirit who railed against the most powerful people and policies. Her call to action continues to resound. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. For another fearless woman who knew what must be done, check out this video on Ida B. Wells.
I certainly appreciate your listening to that hidden history of Rosa Parks. As you know, one of the first, may or may not know, one of the first shows that I did when it came back to the airwaves on Community Speaks was a museum owner who gave Rosa Parks a place to live in that museum, in that mansion, for the last 10 years of her life. So that was a great contribution that was given to this warrior for justice that sat down so that we can all stand up and showed the power of what people can do together, as that bus boycott really took it to the segregated Jim Crow system that was taking place throughout the South, but especially in that situation was Montgomery, Alabama. As you heard, that was so much that she had to contribute to the progress of this country. 813-239-9663. Rosa Parks will be remembered all over Montgomery, Alabama, but we're remembering her here in Florida because there are people who are still in the ruling class trying to get us to embrace bad law and follow bad law, and that still is a fight to this day. As we have pointed out, there have been those who have told the military, there have been 6 Democrats who told the military that you don't have to abide by, or you don't have to carry out illegal orders. And there is a such thing as illegal orders. Just because somebody was elected and gave an order doesn't make it legal automatically. The order itself is illegal, and military troops should concern themselves with the dignity of people and not carrying out bad orders that we're seeing carried out right now. Especially when you have the contradictions, you have people who are being investigated for saying military troops shouldn't carry out bad law, but also you have bombs going off in the Caribbean right now, where allegedly drug boats are being shot down. There's no due process. There's no proof that there are actually drugs on these little boats, and we have people being killed right before our very eyes in the name of the U.S. citizenry. And now Congress is going to review what is going on. They say lawmakers from both parties are launching congressional reviews of the U.S. military strikes against vessels. And of course, as I said earlier, this is happening at a time when a major drug dealer who had been convicted, and in the past, the Justice Department didn't bring a case unless they had complete evidence. And yet, after all of that, if you are somebody who is in good with this POTUS, then he can pardon you just because he can. And so while he's bombing people, a major drug dealer has been pardoned. So you're bombing ships out of the water. You're sending a contradictory message. But lawmakers are going to see if this is all legal. They're citing reports that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a verbal order to kill defenseless survivors of a U.S. missile attack on a boat in the Caribbean Sea. And so at least one Democratic senator, Tim Kaine, said this rises to the level of a war crime if it's true. And at least one Ohio Republican has noted that leaders of the Armed Services Committee in both the House and the Senate have opened investigations. So POTUS has confirmed on Sunday that he had recently spoken with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and is weighing whether to carry out strikes on the Venezuelan mainland, which will probably send ground troops into Venezuela. But is all of this even legal? Is it right? Does it make sense? It's full of contradictions. At least one Republican has asked whether a follow-up strike aimed at people no longer able to fight. Said Congress does not have information on what happened, and obviously if that occurred, that would be very serious, and he agrees that would be an illegal act. And POTUS has confirmed yesterday that he, as I said, spoke with the president, but I think that he really wants to escalate this for whatever reason. He's going to be on a contradictory foreign policy if you continue to see that happen. So Congress is going to weigh in. I guess they're going to ask a bunch of questions. I don't know if they're going to get any truthful answers, but they're going to ask a bunch of questions. And so, but that's just one area of tension on the globe. There's more tension rising in the Middle East. The POTUS said that on social media posting, his administration is satisfied with the Syrian president's efforts to stabilize Syria. But the POTUS also underscored that it's important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria. People are going to be watching those relationships to see if there's going to be more violence in the Middle East, as we've seen it escalate. After we saw almost 68,000 people, Palestinians killed in Israel's war on Gaza. We've seen some escalation in Iran. We've seen escalation on Lebanon, and we're going to see whether or not this new direction in Syria is going to be embraced, or will it be at the center of new violence in the Middle East. We're going to be watching that. We're also seeing military crackdowns in U.S. cities. I was just in New Orleans, but we're seeing around 250 federal borders agents are aiming to arrest over 5,000 people after they launched their something called Swamp Sweep, a months-long immigration crackdown in southeast Louisiana and into Mississippi. So this deployment centered in New Orleans, Democratic-run New Orleans, and Border Patrol Commander There's a commander named Gregory Bovina. He has led aggressive operations in Chicago, Los Angeles, Charlotte, North Carolina, and is expected to head the campaign in New Orleans. People in New Orleans have been on the edge since its planned operations were reported earlier this month. And so the Republican governor, Jeff Landry, said he welcomes the federal agents and just these creepy names they're coming up with to basically laugh off this kind of leadership that we're seeing all over this country that is aimed at this president's political enemies in places that are run by Democrats. It's just the worst kind of policy we're seeing nationally and foreign policy that we've ever seen, in my opinion. But I want to hear more about what all of you think about what is happening right now in your name. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. At the same time, we're seeing these redistricting efforts because I think that these Republicans know that a lot of what is happening in the name of their party is indefensible. So they are trying to change the playing field, make it more unfair for Democrats here in the mid-decade to try to change the playing field in their favor. And we're seeing all of this happening as we're seeing these policies being carried out. So what say you? 813-239-9663. Will we continue to see a growing resistance to all of this, or will we just bow down? There are people who are writing us and calling us. We're going to share some of those emails, but right now I'm going to go to the telephone line so that we can talk directly with you. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. And looks like we're going to go to Seminole because Dan wants to talk about Rosa Parks. Thank you for calling, Dan.
Hey, resistance is the key, man. You're right. And I got to give a shout out to Miss Rosa, man, because, you know, like the Neville Brothers song, that is, she was the spark, you know?
Yeah.
And so, hats off to you to bringing that up. The thing that I think we really got to do right now is we got to hold Congress's feet to the fire. They acquiesce the power. We got to just hold them.
Right.
Congress should be declaring national emergency. Congress should be saying that there's war, that we're in war with Venezuela. It's not. It's not the king. We got to get Congress back to its duty. Number one, we're the number one. Congress is the first element of our federal system, and we've given it up.
Right. So far, that's what we've seen them do. They just acquiesce to this administration, this executive.
You know, but I think the thing, Rosa Parks is an example. You know, sometimes protest is good and stuff, too, but you have to take her example is just resist. Subtly resist.
Mm-hmm.
And resist means by just saying no.
Right.
And you can say no in a myriad of little things that they are going to try to do to you and just say, no, this is not happening. And I think we got to take that power back.
Right.
You know, Congress should reflect our no.
Yeah, and Rosa Parks, that was the most simplest resistance. She just sat there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm watching this guy, following this guy named Ted Stammer on Facebook, and he's writing a book about resistance, and there's a difference between resistance and protest, and protest may not be as effective as resistance.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, because, you know, just having those numbers in the streets is what is really the most powerful thing. It's the way to talk to your government.
Yeah, but they kind of let you, you know what? They kind of also wink and nod. Okay, yeah, we'll let them protest. But still nothing gets done.
Oh, yeah, well, they definitely try to define the protesters in their way.
Absolutely. It's where they want. It's, there's always the wink and the nod. You know, It's got to be the subtle, quiet things, boycotts or whatever, that, are really going to be the answer to this.
Okay, Dan. Thank you for calling.
Okay, thanks.
We're going to go to St. Pete to see how Jerry is holding up as he wants to talk about the face masks that are being used by ICE. Thank you for calling, Jerry from St. Pete. You say what?
Hey, man, thank you again. I appreciate your show, and I often don't get the call because I got to work, so thanks for taking my call.
Certainly.
And so, yeah, I asked this at Down and Dirty, and they had some attorneys there, and I like that, appreciate that show too, but they really didn't answer my question. So the focus is this whole face mask thing. I don't recall that ever being executed in the United States of America where a legal officer is covering his identity, his face.
Right.
And I wondered if you looked into that. And the only thing that brings back memories of face coverings to me was like Muslim warriors. Don't they cover their face? I don't know, the Arabs, they cover their faces, right? But have we ever done that?
No,
to your knowledge?
Not that I can recall, except, we know that the Ku Klux Klan have covered their face because they knew they were also representatives of ruling class officers. They were in office, they were judges, they were police officers, and so that was the only other time in U.S. history that I can think of where people tried to hide their identity.
When was that?
Well, the Klan has been a part ever since.
That's right. The Klan, that's right. Oh,
right.
Yeah, them. Oh, yeah, the white ones.
Right.
the white guy. Yeah, no, okay, but no, I'm talking about, secure officers.
No, I've never seen that. The only place I've seen, other place.
And I'm wondering of the legality of it. I mean, is it even legal?
It shouldn't be.
And that's what.
We have a Congress that's not going to challenge a whole lot.
But I mean, yeah, but so what? We need to at least talk about it. You're providing a venue to at least talk about it.
That's
what's
true.
the next step?
I know.
But I mean, I've just seen in the movies like, Lawrence Arabia and stuff, and these guys, maybe it's because of the sand, but these guys are covering their heads, or maybe some of the Japanese samurai guys, but I don't think we've ever done it.
I don't think we've ever done it, but I do think the ideas come from what Russia had done to Ukraine using masked troops.
I'm not into that either, man. I'm not into that. I'm not into it.
Right.
I'm not into it. I mean, if you're going to work, I understand. What about our security? I mean, I know they need to be secure, but if you choose that job, man, I'm not trying to. I'm sure there's some good people in the program, but I mean, it just doesn't seem legal. Is my point.
Right.
I don't know about moral, but it doesn't seem legal, and I've never seen it in the United States of America. And I don't consider your reference one that I want to represent. I don't want to represent. That's not what I'm talking about. Security officers of police and the people who are supposed to be protecting us.
I understood. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you. You're welcome.
813-239-9663. This is Community Speaks, an opportunity to take your telephone calls as we talk about these issues, put these issues in perspective. But, there's we're talking about bad law, bad policy, war crimes, and what are we going to do to put a stop to it? We're supposed to have the power. The power is supposed to be manifested through the Congress, but we have a divided Congress, and maybe we'll have an opportunity as we spiral into 2026 to change the game in Congress. But as of right now, we have people who are allowing these contradictions to play themselves out. 813-239-9663. You can also write me, DJ, at WMNF.org. I'd like to read some of your emails as you weigh in on these issues. People have written in the past as saying, their mantra is for this POTUS administration, this regime is, I will not obey. 813-239-9663 is the number to call if that's your feeling, or what is your feeling in these times as we deal with a government that seems to be out of control, or at the very worst, not carrying out its own duties to check and balance an executive. So we'll go to Dunedin and see what Carl has to offer today here on Community Speaks. Thank you for calling, Carl. You say what?
Hey, enjoying the show.
Thank you.
We're being run by an idiocracy. I think of the movie.
Yeah.
We're not far off, you know. It's unbelievable. But, Stephen Miller is Trump's right-hand man. And there's reports that he was, like, openly hostile to Black and Hispanic students when he was in school. Mm-hmm. And, never mind the ignorant white people that voted for Trump and the old white people that voted for Trump. The Black and Hispanic voters that voted for Trump, he barely won. And I wonder how they feel today when, he wants to put troops in any big city run by Black or Hispanic people. He wants to put troops in there. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's the whole thing is just so disgusting. And, I hope we don't have riots like we had in the 60s. But, the Republicans are desperate. And, I don't know. I just hope and pray as few people get hurt as possible in this whole thing. So anyway, I'm enjoying the show. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you for calling. And I wanted to ask you before you hung up whether or not you would suggest that movie Idiocracy for us to all go and watch. Maybe that should be on some of our Christmas watching list. See what what might be similar to reality right now. Let's go to Lakeland and see what Simon has to say. Thank you for calling, Simon. You say what?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm the gentleman talking about Middle Eastern scarves. I don't know if he's referring to the keffiyeh, which originated out of Iraq and Kufa, and it was stolen by the Palestinian Arabs. What was interesting to me is you talk about Rosa Parks. I'd like to see a Bayard Rustin Day, because Rosa Parks actually, her whole story, toward the end of her life, she was robbed and beaten up over $53 by a young black man, Joseph Skipper, 28.
Who had a very bad problem,
Yeah, and the owner of Caesars, Michael Itlich, paid rent from the time she was 81 to 92. But Bayard Rustin, 13 years earlier than 1955 with Rosa Parks, when she refused to go to the back of the bus, he had done it twice. He had done it in 42, Bayard Rustin, and he had done it in 1947. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to know what your thoughts, the fact that he was a gay black man, that he hasn't gotten recognition for everything he's done.
Yeah, I feel your frustration on that. I think that's the reason why we don't know a lot of the facts around his life. And so I think that can be rectified. I think there are enough people in positions of power that, not just political power, but who could tell that story in Hollywood. There are people who have that ability to do that. I have seen that there's already efforts underway to tell the story of Bayard Rustin. But yeah, there's so much more that needs to be told. But there are a lot of people's story who hasn't been told, and we're going to hopefully continue that scholarship here in this country.
Yeah, the thing I would leave you is two things real quick. Is his debate with Malcolm X was just reflected on how brilliant they were both in their own way. But with regard to resistance, I'll say this: whether it's resistance or revolution or protest, there has to be an identity component with all three of those. And opposing the identity is always the other or the stranger. Take care.
Okay. Doesn't always have to be identity. People just stand in solidarity. 813-239-9663. You can also write DJ at WMNF.org. I do have a few emails here on the subject of Rosa Parks. Jen writes, as you know, she and her husband moved to Detroit from Montgomery, where they spent the rest of their lives, and are buried. Detroit renamed 12th Street after her, as she lived in the neighborhood of the 1967 rebellion, and also named the downtown transit center after her. And there are also a few barbers around the city who were trained by her husband. Jen is in Detroit right now. So thank you, Jen, for telling me about that. She feels that the most important to mention about her work is something that took place in Detroit 3 weeks after the original MLK Walk to Freedom in June of 1963. Black sex worker Cynthia Scott was shot and killed by a white cop, and Rosa Parks was a key voice in advocating for her and against police brutality, which led to the reigniting of the Black liberation movement there in Detroit. There's a brief bio that Jen sent me on Cynthia Scott. We will look further into that. Thank you, Jen. That's very illuminating. Thank you for that. And you know, so we don't hear about a lot of what happened with a lot of these other activists, but one of the reasons why we do hear and still celebrate Rosa Parks is how the people responded with that bus boycott in that Alabama city, that Montgomery town, at a time when it would have been dangerous to do so, but they did it. And that took courage on the part of all those who participated in that bus boycott in Montgomery, which is why we still talk about what happened there. That was some resistance, and we still celebrate it to this day. 813-239-9663 is the number to call if you want to talk here on Community Speaks, as we're talking about resistance, which is something that we seem to always talk about. We're going to go to Margaret. Margaret also wants to speak on Rosa Parks. Thank you for calling, Margaret. Thank you for calling.
Hi. How are you? Yeah, I highly respect Ms. Rosa Parks for what she did on December 1st, 1955. Mm-hmm. But there's a young lady that we don't talk about, and we need to give her credit as well. Claudette Colvin. She was 15 at the time, and yes, she did the first refusing to give up her seat on the bus, and that was March 2nd, 1955. Right. She was arrested for that, and they would not give her any kind of attention because of her age. But she was 15 at the time, and that was March 2nd, 1955. And Ms. Rosa Parks did it December 1st, 1955.
Right.
So I hope we can get Claudette Colvin in there somewhere.
Yeah, Claudette Colvin. You're definitely right. Thank you for that.
Okay.
We will remember her name as well. 813-239-9663. Thank you, Margaret, for that. We're going to go and see, we're going to go to Indian Rocks and see what Marie has to offer here on Community Speaks. Thank you for calling, Marie.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good.
Well, I agree with the previous caller because there are so many unknown activists that have not gotten credit. And it would be wonderful if we could just all come together and open up our own museum and put together a list of people who should be appreciated, because every small act of resistance against this, kind of oppression, yes, for many reasons, should be celebrated. I'm the youngest of 7. I'm the most vocal in my family. I do not turn away. I lean into everything because I am not afraid. And everybody's constantly wanting, why are you wasting your time? It's going to happen either way. And I can't comprehend that. I am compelled to get involved. I am compelled to resist, because I know that this is the most serious moment in my lifetime as a woman and a mother and an aunt. And I think that, what I'm going to be honest, when this whole thing happened with Trump, what I found was my circle got smaller, and I was okay with that. I was okay with losing family members who didn't care about feeding the poor, feeding children, teachers losing their status. I mean, what in the world is happening where we are not impeaching this man immediately? Right. So I am, you got to fight the good fight and go out to every protest, because every tiny ounce of resistance matters.
Right.
And I really appreciate you doing what you do.
I certainly thank you for calling. Those are important words.
All right. Well, they are. You have a great day. Thank you.
You too, Marie. Thank you for calling from Indian Rocks Beach and Indian Rocks. So give us a call if you want to talk. 813-239-9663. That's the number to call. And we've been getting a lot of email, but also there's some announcements that we're going to be talking about going forward in a few weeks. There's 36th annual Dr. MLK Jr. Essay and Oratorial Contest, something that I'm looking forward to. That's with the city of St. Petersburg. So the city wants to encourage people to submit submissions to that. The Recreation Department, Enoch Davis Center, in collaboration with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Organization Incorporated, and the Pinellas County Pan-Hellenic Council is announcing this essay and oratorical contest. It invites young people to explore the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But I think you can throw in a couple of legacies in the process, because when Rosa Parks sat down, first of all, she said she thought of Emmett Till, who was a 14-year-old who was visiting Mississippi from Chicago in 1955, and he was killed by the husband and I guess his friends because he allegedly whistled at the white woman earlier in the day when he was visiting the store she ran. She decided that his life, that he was way out of bounds just by whistling at her, and so ended up losing his life. They kidnapped him right out of his uncle's home, and ultimately his uncle did testify in court. These were the men who grabbed him, but it didn't matter. The jury and the all-white Jim Crow ruling class in that money Mississippi town even paid for the defense of these killers, these guys, as they were on trial. And then they did, after the all-white jury let them off, despite the witness who testified, they go and do a magazine interview where they seem proud of what they did. So, there has to be resistance, and it needs to be a resistance that stands the test of time, that recognizes that, you can't demand change and even achieve change and rest on your laurels, because there are those who never wanted change and will continue to fight to reverse the progress. 813-239-9663. We're going to see what Mike in St. Pete has to say regarding U.S. aid discontinuation. Thank you for calling, Mike.
And it's good to talk to you again, Mabili. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Well, good. It's been a while. I read that the discontinuation of the U.S. aid program all across the world has already resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. I don't know how they calculate that, but it wouldn't really surprise me, because these programs were very helpful in lifting up people who didn't have access to the same resources and whatnot that we have in the U.S. And I think it was something that was part of U.S. policy that, it's a humanistic thing, and it's something that you give to other countries. A rising tide lifts all boats. What have you heard about that as far as maybe the accuracy of that number?
Well, I'm looking at some of those reports now, looking for specific numbers. I have to get back to you on that, but I do know that there have been those aid. That aid was feeding people. It was giving people medical care. And so while we twiddle our thumbs, people are dying. People are taking their last breath because, that aid dried up just out of nowhere. There was no opportunity for people to prepare for the loss of that aid. So even that was wrong. Point. So I think that, that might be some accuracy to a lot of that. Yeah.
And there's so much hunger and suffering going on in the U.S., and I think that that's where a lot of people's charity dollars are directed first. In fact, historically, we've always turned somewhat of a blind eye to the starving children in the most poverty-stricken nations. But another thing I wanted to mention, and I know that you have a lot of callers, is the Mark Kelly and the other congressmen who came out with the video talking about the soldiers and the importance of not taking illegal orders, not following illegal orders. And, of course, the one example that came up was, I think the guy's name was Hugh Thompson, who came upon the My Lai massacre as it was ongoing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he
during the Vietnam War, yeah.
Yeah, he challenged Kelly about this, and for years he was vilified. Thompson received death threats, and he had mutilated animals left on his doorstep and this and that, because he had realized, though, that these illegal orders were a desecration and a terrible blight on the U.S. and everything that was wrong with the Vietnam War, and this just went even further. But I think it's important for people to think about what Mark Kelly and these other congressmen were talking about, because they're not only talking about not the responsibility and part of the oath that the military takes not to follow illegal orders, but I think there's a part of that oath that instructs them to defend the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That's right.
And I think that when you talk about somebody like Hegseth, who's directing somebody with the push of a button to blow up people who are in the water and trying to cling to whatever debris there is, on top of what's probably already illegal in the first place, I think that is crossing a line that not is only illegal, but that these members of the Trump administration are enemies of, which is just such a strong word, even for me as a caller, an anonymous, faceless caller, to say on the radio that these people are enemies of the United States and of all its citizens. There's not a single thing a member of Trump's cabinet or any of these people have accomplished. We've left Ukraine in a terrible spot where they're obviously, probably, most obviously going to lose their territory. Israel is continuing to violate the so-called ceasefire on a virtual daily basis with impunity. Yesterday, I think it was, they killed an 8-year-old and 11-year-old. And one thing about Israel, they lie all the time, their government, when they're questioned about these things. But this case was so extreme that they didn't even bother to say, oh, we thought they had bombs strapped around them. They said, well, we'll have to look into it. You'll never hear about it again, Mabili. And the U.S. and Israel are joined at the hip in terms of their policy. And let's talk about these Israeli soldiers who are just firing these people who are totally have no defense and totally unarmed, and put it in line with not only violating the ceasefire, but what is going on with ICE, these faceless terrorist, jackbooted thugs. What'd they do? They took away a 19-year-old college student the other day. So the list of crimes of this administration is seemingly endless. I don't know how it's going to end, but you just don't know where to start and where to end. Right. And I saw Nuremberg. Believe it or not, and you got to believe it because it's the truth. I was the only person in the theater. What's wrong with this country?
Yeah, I think that people are just not willing to accept that this is happening at the moment, that it is not as bad as it sounds for some reason, but it is. And but once we get the facts, it's going to be maybe too late to do anything about it. So
we know that in the 30s, millions of Germans were not able to accept the facts.
Right. Until they saw it with their own eyes. Right.
So thank you for being a forum for all this, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for calling, Mike.
Okay, bye.
Well, looks like we're running out of time. We got about 5 more minutes. You can still call me, but there's a lot to be said about especially following illegal law, and the My Lai massacre is one such thing, but it has such carryover, because even when we were talking about the George Floyd killing, one of the fixes were when if you as a police officer saw another police officer going over the line, then you should step up. You should step up and grab him by the hand, grab him by the arm, and stop him from doing what he's doing, or pull his knee off of a citizen's neck that isn't resisting violently. Yeah, you as a cop have a right to resist a cop that's doing something illegal. We can carry that over, and that's the reason why these laws are there, so that we know what we're supposed to be doing. And going after people politically because they said troops shouldn't obey law, we're going to see what happens in this investigation of Senator Mark Kelly. But I think that what you're going to do is really open the eyes of the U.S. citizenry to say, yeah, there's something stinks, there's something wrong with all of this, and people should be able to resist without being investigated and potentially lose their liberty as well. It's not totally unheard of. At Georgetown University, the law professor said there has been a significant uptick in court-martials of retired service members over the past 10 years. While courts have debated the constitutionality, the practice is currently allowed of, court-martial, or going after people who are resisting. There have been roughly a dozen such prosecutions across service branches. We're going to continue to stay on this. We're going to watch this investigation as it's carried out. Some of the Pentagon is misreading military law to go after Kelly as a retired Navy fighter pilot, and these others say that this Arizona Democrat cannot be prosecuted as a member of Congress. And so a group of former military prosecutors insist he did nothing wrong. We're going to continue to watch that. A conscientious objector is on the line right now. You may have the last word. Ron, thank you for calling.
Yes, sir. That rule is called that, just that, the conscientious objector. They had a guy in the war. I forget the story, but it was a guy, he was a medic, and he refused to use a gun and fight. But there's a story about him. He received all kind of medals and everything for being a hero because he refused to use or kill people, and that's all he wanted to do was help them. And it actually might be based on that. But a lot of times when you're in trouble in the military, if you don't follow the laws, they discharge you for being a conscientious objector. That's the highest the rule can go against you. Mm-hmm. So that's from what I know. So,
but you'll still be safe from prosecution if you're a conscientious objector, right?
Yeah, that's a disability life. It's like you ain't gonna do that. It crosses my conscience. It hurts my conscience.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Ron. Thank you for calling.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too.
All right.
Well, of course, this has been another Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patro Mobili, and of course, I appreciate all of your telephone calls and emails that came in, and we're going to continue to talk about these issues, put it into some context. There's always good trouble, especially it's good trouble when you're resisting illegal law, bad law, which is what we were talking about today. Of course, we're going to get back to the music now. Up next is It's the Music Monday. I want to thank Shay for all of your help answering the telephone calls. And I want to thank you for your calls and your emails. Lanny Whalen is coming your way straight away with It's the Music Monday. But first, we're going to get more news update from The Scoop, locally produced news right here from our illustrious news department here at WMNF. But that's my time. Stay tuned for more news and getting back to the music. Thank you. This has been Community Speaks. Giving Tuesday happens every year on the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. a day when millions of people around the world choose generosity over shopping. This year, WMNF is inviting you to join the movement and support the station that amplifies local voices, independent journalism, and great music. You can get involved by donating, volunteering,